The sky above level 94 was painted in soft hues of parchment beige and pale turquoise, as though an artist had brushed the clouds on a worn film reel. A constant hum hung in the air, not electrical, but analog, the clicking of an unseen projector cycling through frames. Grass rolled over hills in velvet green waves, the texture too perfect to be natural, like cloth covering some vast stage. The air smelled faintly of warm milk and old dust. Ezra blinked against the morning light as he stumbled into the town square. He'd arrived the way most do, through a forgotten dream, or, perhaps, slipping between the cracks of consciousness and reality. The only sound was the babbling of the massive fountain at the square's center, spraying endless arcs of almond water into the basin below. He cupped his hands and drank deeply, letting the faintly sweet liquid wash down the dry ache in his throat. Everything around him looked handcrafted. Tiny houses with carefully tiled roofs leaned at just the slightest unnatural angle, too precise in their imperfections. The milk van nearby gleamed in the sun, its chrome smiling cow mascot painted in the rubbery style of early animation. Ezra approached it cautiously, peering through its round windows to see racks of chilled glass bottles inside, all labeled in blocky, cheerful lettering. Almond milk, for strong bones and stronger minds. A cheery jingle suddenly played from a nearby siren pole, something whimsical, like a silent cartoon about a dancing spoon and a jazz-playing cat. Ezra flinched, but the townsfolk didn't. They moved in looping, mechanical routines, waving politely, delivering milk, watering their tiny front lawns. All smiles, all jerky, like they were being controlled by an invisible stop-motion hand. No one spoke. Their mouths moved occasionally, but there was no sound. Only the music, only the ticking of the projector in the sky. "Where am I?" Ezra asked, but no one answered. He walked toward one of the homes, passing a street lamp shaped like a cartoon sunflower. A 1930s-style sedan sat at the curb, immaculately preserved, its white-walled tires resting on cobblestones that were just slightly too round. Everything was just off enough to make his skin itch. He knocked on the door of a two-story house with a white picket fence. A smiling old woman opened it, her eyes unmoving, her mouth fixed. "Is this—" The door shut in his face. No sound, no breath. Behind him, a shadow passed overhead. Ezra turned toward the hills, catching the glint of something massive above the horizon. A floating castle, held aloft by a transparent mountain that shimmered like heat waves. It loomed in the distance, half faded like an unfinished sketch. He turned back. The sky had changed. The light dimmed slightly. The music was slowing. A girl tugged at his sleeve. Young, maybe 11, her pigtails stiff and too perfect, her eyes glassy. "You need to hide," she whispered. Her voice cracked through the silence like a needle skipping across a record. "The music's gonna stop soon." Ezra's pulse surged. Hide from what? The girl didn't answer. She only pointed at the siren pole. The speaker sputtered, skipping notes like an old record. Then, silence. And from behind the milk van a figure unfurled. Its limbs were rubber hose long. Its mouth was wide and painted on. It waved, then it ran, straight at him. Ezra bolted. His shoes clacked against cobblestones that now felt hollow, too resonant, like running across a film set. Behind him, the animation skittered on elongated legs, arms swinging in wild arcs, its painted eyes fixed in a smile that stretched beyond expression and into madness. Each movement snapped like frames, stuttering but gaining. The girl had vanished. Ezra tore around a corner, down an alley between two narrow buildings, one shaped like a pie shop, the other like a dentist's office, both with pastel signs that peeled at their edges. He didn't dare look back. The air had shifted. The warmth of the artificial sun had given way to something colder, hungrier. Somewhere in the distance, the fountain continued to churn, but the rest of the town had gone still. No milkmen, no smiles, no music, just the sound of his breath and the sickening silence behind it. Then a sound. Scritch, scritch, scritch. Ezra ducked into an open garage. Inside, a rusting sedan and a wooden cabinet stuffed with cans of food labeled in warped, looping fonts. Creamed moonbeams, dreamy beans, real sugar. He slammed the garage door shut and crawled under the car, his back scraping the undercarriage. The garage light flickered dimly overhead. Something shuffled outside. Ezra held his breath. A shadow passed under the door crack, stretching, distorting. Then, a sound like laughter played backward. The doorknob twisted. He pressed his hand over his mouth. The door creaked open, and the animation stepped inside. From where he lay, Ezra could see its feet. Oversized shoes like a cartoon hobo's with flapping soles and painted-on laces. It walked like a puppet yanked by drunk strings, its legs crossing oddly, knees buckling without falling. It sniffed the air. Then something changed. Another shape passed by the door, smaller, skittering. Ezra's stomach turned as he saw it. A rat, but not quite. It had joints like a marionette, its fur molded clay, twitching with... When the creature moved deeper into the garage, Ezra rolled out, quiet as he could, and bolted again, this time through a back door that slammed behind him. No sirens, no moonlight, just the strange mechanical flicker of the stars above. He ran through the backyards, each one eerily identical, white fences, lawn chairs, ceramic gnomes with frozen grins. The further he got from the square, the more distorted things became. One yard had a tree growing upside down from the grass, leaves drooping toward the sky. Another had a television embedded in the lawn, playing black and white cartoons on loop, showing scenes that twisted and warped frame by frame into violence. Finally, the houses thinned. He reached the edge of town. The hills rolled out before him, endless and empty, the grass too uniform, the stars too still. Ezra stumbled into the field, his breath heaving, and spotted it. A single water tower in the distance. Its silhouette shimmered with the reflection of almond water. Nearby, parked in the middle of nowhere, was a lone milk van, its windows fogged. He didn't know where else to go. The floating castle loomed above now, closer than before, its outline clearer, lit from within by something pulsing, waiting. Ezra kept running toward the tower, the grass whispering with each step. Behind him, he heard them coming. Animations, smilers, and worse. The grass lapped at Ezra's ankles like velvet tongues as he sprinted toward the water tower, its skeletal frame rising like a monument in an endless sea. His breath burned in his chest, and every time he glanced back, he caught flickers, jerky shapes lurching across the landscape. One stumbled on all fours, a hound, snarling in twisted increments like a slideshow of its own rage. Another drifted sideways through the air, limbs trailing behind it like a puppet drowning in slow motion. The night here didn't deepen like normal darkness. It pixelated. Stars blinked in and out with analog fuzz. The horizon kept bending and snapping, warping like a strip of damaged film. It wasn't just nightfall. It was a breakdown of the world itself. The water tower stood crooked, its tank rusted and patched with tin that looked too pristine, like set dressing. A ladder ran up its side, bolted crookedly into the metal. Without slowing, Ezra jumped and scrambled up, his hands slipping on the rungs. Below, the chorus of entities grew louder, scraping, giggling, murmuring. A smiler darted between hills, its glowing grin the only visible part, flickering like teeth in a dream. He reached the top and hauled himself onto the platform. From here, the view was wrong. The town in the distance twitched, lights flashing in patterns that didn't align with physics, like someone playing with a lighting board. Beyond the hills, he could see rooms, entire living rooms, kitchens, hallways, just sitting in the grass. disconnected from any structure. One had a still-spinning ceiling fan, another held a dining table set for dinner, candles melting slowly in time-lapse stutters. Ezra turned to the hatch on the water tank. It was sealed with a rusted lock. He gripped it, twisted. It broke clean off, disintegrating into dust. He lifted the hatch. Inside, almond water glowed faintly, sloshing gently as though stirred from below. He leaned in. That's when the voice came. From somewhere not external, but within his head. A whisper, wrapped in static. "Drink and wake, or stay and remember." Ezra recoiled. What does that mean?" The tower trembled. Below, one of the animations had begun climbing the ladder, its body flailing with each reach, hands bending the rungs. It laughed, gurgling, and glitched. Ezra backed toward the edge of the platform, heart pounding. He looked at the glowing water again. He didn't know what it meant to wake. Was this a dream? A memory? A trap? The creature was almost there, its fingers curled over the last rung, eyes wide and lidless, mouth stretching to the corners of its face. Ezra made a choice. He dove, straight into the almond water. The sensation was immediate, too cold, too bright, like plunging into a strobe. It pulled him downward through layers of thick syrup and shimmering light, and he couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, just falling. And then he was standing, soaked, coughing, blinking in the daylight. But it wasn't the town anymore. He stood in a grassy hill again, but this time the hills were still, silent, real. A gentle breeze played through the air. No music, no hum, no analog flicker. In front of him, a single white door. Freestanding, no frame, no hinges, just there. Behind him, the floating castle shimmered, closer than ever. Its windows pulsed like eyes. From somewhere far away, faint laughter echoed. Not threatening, childlike. Ezra turned the handle of the door and stepped through. The door closed behind Ezra without a sound. He was inside a room now, though calling it that felt too generous. It was a hallway, but the walls shifted like cloth hung in a windless space. They breathed. The wallpaper, a once elegant floral print, peeled in synchronized pulses, revealing layers beneath. Newspaper clippings, hand-drawn eyes, 1930s cartoons with their faces scrubbed off in graphite smears. Light came from nowhere, yet everything was visible in sharp monochrome, like a black and white film had come to life around him. Even Ezra's skin had changed hue, no longer flesh-colored but a soft gray, as though the world had painted over him. The hallway stretched forward with no visible end, only doors on either side. Some cracked open, some sealed tight with wax or belts or something worse. He reached for the first door on his left and gently pushed it open. Inside was a bedroom. A child's. A nightlight in the shape of a mouse flickered on the dresser, projecting dancing shapes onto the ceiling. The bed was made, perfect, like in a catalog, but someone, or something, was under the covers, a lump, unmoving. Ezra stepped in, breath held. He approached the bed slowly. The ticking sound returned, that invisible projector again. He peeled back the blanket. There was a doll, old, hand-stitched, with button eyes and sewn lips. Its arms ended in tiny, floppy gloves. Ezra reached for it, something tugging in his gut like a memory, then froze. The doll blinked. Its button eyes twisted, reshaping into real ones for a split second before returning. It smiled, mouth tearing a bit at the stitches. Ezra stumbled back, knocking over a lamp that didn't fall, just froze in midair. He fled the room, back into the hallway. Something was different. The corridor was shorter now, tighter. The wallpaper crawled with ants, or things pretending to be ants. From the end of the hall came music again, but this time it was a lullaby, scratchy and broken. "Go to sleep, little dreamer. Let the real unwind." Ezra turned toward the sound and followed it. The doors he passed began to warp. Some became televisions, flickering static cartoons inside glass panes. Others melted into the walls. The hallway pulsed with heat and the scent of celluloid. Then abruptly, the hallway ended. He stood in what looked like a vintage theater lobby. Velvet carpet, chandeliers made of flickering reels, a concession stand filled with popcorn bags that moved ever so slightly. Behind the ticket counter sat an usher, head down, body unmoving. Its skin was matte and rough, clay. Ezra stepped closer. The usher raised its head. Its eyes were hollow sockets filled with film tape slowly unwinding. It didn't speak, but it handed Ezra a stub of yellowed paper, a ticket. Admit 1, the final reel. Ezra looked up. The theater doors had opened. Inside was only darkness. He stepped through, and the doors slammed shut behind him. The theater swallowed him. No footsteps echoed. No air moved. The silence inside wasn't emptiness. It was deliberate, as though the space had been vacuumed of sound, of breath, of time. Ezra stood on sticky carpet, eyes adjusting to the dim light. Rows of seats stretched down in a gentle slope toward a massive screen draped in red curtains, motionless and velvet damp with age. Each seat held a figure, not people, mannequins. Clay-skinned, rubber-jointed, frozen mid-gesture, some with their heads tilted back in mock laughter, others mid-clap. Every one faced the screen. None acknowledged Ezra. He walked slowly down the aisle, the ticket stub clenched in his fist, ink smearing into his palm. As he passed, some mannequins shifted subtly, fingers twitching, mouths slightly adjusting their grins. It was not imagination. They were aware of him. He found a seat near the front, the plush cushion oddly warm. When he sat, the screen flickered once, then again. The curtains shivered, then yanked themselves open with a jerking jolt. The projector started. Click. Whirr. Click. On screen, an old cartoon began. Grainy, black and white, but familiar. A little too familiar. It showed the fountain in the town square. Empty. Still. Then figures entered, animated in rubber hose style. Ezra recognized one, the milkman, smiling, bouncing in that offbeat way. Another was the girl with pigtails, waving at the camera, smile stitched to her face. The town looped, cars driving in circles, milk delivered, music playing. Then the cartoon changed. Night fell, abruptly. The animation appeared, leaping out from the fountain like a twisted circus act. It tore through the town, grinning, dancing, dismembering. The other characters didn't run. They clapped, laughed. Ezra's stomach turned as the camera zoomed in on the faces of the victims. Their eyes weren't drawn. They were real, human. Suddenly the screen changed again. It showed a bedroom, a bed. Ezra's bed. On screen he slept, twitching, sweating. Then his eyes opened. In the film, Ezra sat up, walked to the window, opened it, climbed out, and disappeared into fog. Ezra stared, heart pounding. He whispered, "This is a dream." The mannequin next to him turned its head. "No," it said, voice a hollow, real echo. "You dreamed this. That makes it real." The film changed one last time. The camera floated through the grass hills, toward the floating castle. Inside its window, a shadow watched, then it turned. Ezra saw his own face, but it wasn't quite his. It grinned too wide, moved too smoothly, eyes made of film. The screen went black. The end appeared in white, stark letters, but then the letters twisted. The beginning. The lights in the theater snapped on. Every mannequin turned its head toward him, in perfect unison, and began to rise. The theater filled with the sound of cloth and plastic scraping against velvet. The mannequins stood in stilted choreography, one by one, twitching in their joints, their hands curled, heads ticked to the side like toys remembering how to move. Their eyes, those hollow, clay-sculpted sockets, glowed faintly. From the center of the floor rose a circular platform, its edges turning like the lazy hand of a clock. On it stood a marionette, large, man-sized, its limbs thick and gleaming like lacquered bone. Its painted-on face had been done with care. Big white eyes with inked lashes, a crimson-lipped mouth that stretched across the lower half of its head. It wore a dusty tuxedo and a cracked bow tie. Strings connected it to nothing, but it moved. It raised one hand. The mannequin stopped clapping. The marionette bowed with exaggerated grace, then turned to face Ezra directly. "Welcome," it rasped. "You've reached the center of your performance." Ezra stood slowly, his legs trembling. "Where am I?" he asked, voice dry, brittle. The marionette's painted eyes flicked wider. "Where else would you be? You dreamt this." It took a step forward, joints bending the wrong way. "Every frame, every hill, every scream." "I didn't," Ezra shook his head. "I didn't dream this. I couldn't." "But you did," the mannequins echoed him in chorus. "You did. You did. You did." The marionette gestured, and the theater warped. The velvet curtains peeled back like skin, revealing not brick walls, but film strips, giant and alive, looping through the void. They showed memories, twisted versions of Ezra's life. A birthday party, but everyone wore porcelain masks. A school hallway, flooded with almond water. His childhood bedroom, walls breathing in and out. "This is the reel of your mind," the marionette whispered. "Every sleeper has one. Most never find it. But you're lucid." Ezra's head pounded. "I don't want this." "You already chose it." He turned, ready to run, but the theater seats had vanished. The mannequins now floated in space, orbiting the platform. Beyond them, through the film strip curtains, the sky split open. There it was, the floating castle. Close. Real. More real than anything else in this level. Its windows blinked like eyes. Its towers swayed like they breathed. "You're nearly there," said the marionette, voice low and reverent. "To the seat of the dreamer. The castle is your creation, your keeper, your end. What happens if I reach it? Then we see how deep your dreaming goes." The stage shuddered. A bridge extended from the edge of the platform, made of old reels of film, unspooling into the darkness. At its end, the castle floated, vast and trembling. Ezra stepped toward it. Behind him, the mannequins bowed. The marionette spoke once more, soft and final. "Break the loop, or let it play forever." Ezra crossed the threshold. The castle awaited.
The film reel bridge groaned beneath Ezra's feet, every step echoing like a reel skipping frames. The strips stretched into the void, spliced together with scenes he dared not look at, flickers of his life, bent and corrupted. One frame showed him in a classroom, eyes hollowed, a cartoon smile drawn crudely across his face. Another showed his mother, but her skin was stitched linen and her fingers puppeted by unseen strings. He kept walking. Ahead, the floating castle pulsed in slow, unnatural rhythms. It was stitched together from impossible pieces, turrets made from stacked phonograph horns, stained glass windows that shimmered with looping scenes of dancing entities, and almond water fountains. Its walls, when he finally reached them, were not stone, but clay. Clay shaped like stone, chiseled meticulously down to each hand-sculpted crack. Ezra reached the massive front doors. They opened inward before he touched them. Inside, the castle was warm. The air hummed with film static and a low, continuous lullaby that wove its way through the halls like incense. He walked down a corridor lined with portraits, but each frame contained only him. Dozens of versions, some older, some much younger, some twisted into animation, some cracked like broken puppets. One showed him asleep in bed, eyelids fluttering. It was still moving. He passed mirrors that showed no reflection, lamps shaped like eyeballs, wall sconces that blinked when he got too close. The floor rose and fell in slow breathing motions. Then he came to a spiral staircase. Clay steps, velvet banister. It stretched up into nothing. He climbed. With each step, the castle changed. The walls became darker, more organic. The breathing floor turned to flesh-like textures, occasionally twitching beneath his shoes. The sound of the projector, so constant, so subtle, grew louder, rhythmic, mechanical. Click, 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 click. Ezra emerged into a grand circular chamber. It was a throne room, but no king had ever sat here. At the center was a throne made from discarded film reels, bent theater seats, and puppet limbs. Seated in it was a figure. It was him, but distorted, Its arms were longer. Its skin was matte gray like dried clay. Its eyes were whirring camera lenses, and its chest had a gaping hole where a reel of film spun continuously, feeding into its body. Ezra froze. The figure looked up. "Welcome home." Its voice was perfect. His voice, but unburdened, smiling. "What are you?" "I'm what was left behind when you woke up. I am the dream of you. And you." It stood. The reel in its chest clicked faster. "You are trying to forget me." Ezra took a step back. The room shifted with him. The floor beneath became unstable, sloping like a warping frame. "You can leave," the figure said. "Drink the water again. Wake up, like they all do."
Forget the loop. But this place will go on. I will go on. And I'll wait. Until you sleep again. The reel twisted faster. Images projected on the walls now. Ezra's face, his fears, his mistakes, dreams he didn't remember dreaming. "Or," the figure said, stepping down from the throne, "you stay. Break the cycle. End the dream." It held out a reel. On its label, scrawled in jittery handwriting, "Final cut." Ezra reached for it, hand trembling. If he took it, he knew the loop would end, or everything would unravel. Ezra's fingers brushed the edge of the reel. It was warm, vibrating softly, like it was alive. The final cut. His reflection, if it even was a reflection, stood perfectly still, hand outstretched, eyes made of shuttered film reels spinning faster. The throne room around them groaned with every passing second. Cracks crawled across the clay walls. The images on the film strips were beginning to bleed together, distorting into a mass of moments that Ezra couldn't tell apart anymore. His first day of school, his father leaving, the day he found a sketchbook filled with eyes that weren't his. They repeated, mutated. Some had never happened. Some were happening now. "Take it," said the dream thing in his voice. "You wanted control. This is it." Ezra hesitated. "What happens if I play it?" The thing tilted its head. "Then it ends." "Ends how?" "That's the beauty. You won't know until you press play." Ezra looked down at the reel. It was labeled in ink, but beneath it, scratched faintly into the plastic, was another word. "Help." His own handwriting. He staggered back. "I didn't write that." "You will," the reflection said, stepping closer. "Every time you try to wake up, you find this place. You want to end it. And every time, you get scared." "No," Ezra gritted his teeth. "Not this time." The room trembled violently. The film on the walls caught fire, silent flames licking up images of birthdays, failures, almond water fountains, and twisted creatures. The throne crumbled behind them. "You still don't get it, do you?" said the thing in his voice. "This isn't your dream. You're inside something else's. Something that feeds on dreams. That keeps you looping because your mind makes the best stories. What are you?" It smiled impossibly wide. "I'm your imagination, but I've gone feral." Ezra looked at the reel again. The reel looked back, and he knew what he had to do. He turned toward the projector. It stood behind the throne, massive and ancient. Its reels had been running all this time, feeding the world frame by frame. It was carved from the same clay as the castle, pulsing with stolen thoughts, blinking lenses, and a mouth, yes, a mouth, that chewed on strips of discarded memories. Ezra lifted the final cut. "No more loops," he said. "No more rewinds." The dream thing lunged at him. Ezra jammed the reel into the projector slot and pressed play. The screen went white. Everything went white. The sound of the reel spinning became a scream. Metal, static, human and inhuman all at once. The throne cracked. The walls dissolved. The castle collapsed inward like an ink drawing dropped in water. The floating hills, the fake grass, the almond water towers, the animation, all unmade. Ezra opened his eyes. He lay in his bed. Sheets tangled. The room was dark, still. Outside his window, nothing but wind and street lights. He sat up, rubbed his face. His heart raced, but his chest was whole. His thoughts, his own. He stood, walked to the mirror, looked at himself. No rubber hose limbs, no lens eyes, just Ezra. But something was off. He turned his palm upward, and there, pressed into the skin, faint but undeniable, Admit one, the final reel, burned like a stamp in his flesh.
Ezra didn't sleep for 2 nights. He kept the lights on, kept the TV playing static or low-volume sitcom reruns just to drown out the silence. He avoided mirrors, refused to look at the palm of his hand that the imprint burned like a phantom sun. Admit one, the final real. It hadn't faded. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard it. That sound, the click, click, click of the projector reel. Distant, muffled, but always there, like it had followed him back. By the 3rd day, he couldn't stay awake anymore. Sleep took him like a velvet curtain pulled tight. He braced for level 94. Instead, he woke in his own room again. Daylight. Nothing wrong. Except something was wrong. The photograph on his dresser. He didn't remember owning it. A smiling couple. The man was definitely him, but the woman, he had never met her in his life. And they were standing in front of the fountain in the town square. He flipped the photo over on the back. "Don't forget to smile," written in loopy 1930s cartoon script. He dropped it. The photo didn't land. It hovered in midair, twitching slightly, then slowly sank like it was falling through invisible molasses. Ezra backed away. He ran into the hallway. His apartment was still there, still real but off. The lights flickered, even though the bulbs were fine. The shadows didn't bend right. In the corner of the ceiling near the smoke detector, a loop of film hung like a cobweb. He reached for the front door. The knob turned, but when he opened it, the milk van was parked outside. The chrome cow mascot on the side winked. No driver, just almond milk bottles stacked in the back, fogging gently. Ezra slammed the door shut. No, this is real. This is real. From behind him, a music box jingle began to play. Off-key. Familiar. He turned slowly. The television was on, black and white cartoon. A character walked across a looping landscape. Ezra, animated, his legs moving in that stop-motion stutter. He watched himself reach a castle in the sky. He watched himself sit on the throne. He watched himself press play. He turned off the TV. It kept playing. The projector noise was louder now, not from the screen, but from the walls. He pressed his palm to the drywall. It was warm. It was pulsing. Then, from behind him, a voice. "Cut." Ezra froze. The mirror in the hallway showed not his reflection, but the marionette. Its eyes lens-wide, its mouth painted, its body stringless. And it spoke again. "Ready for the next take?" Ezra stepped back. The mirror cracked down the center. The crack split wider, and fingers reached through. The fingers pushing through the mirror were long, tapering, lacquered like freshly dried clay. They flexed, felt around the air of Ezra's hallway, and then gripped the frame with unnatural precision. Cracks spiderwebbed across the glass as the thing began to pull itself through. Ezra backed away slowly, every breath catching in his throat. The hallway light flickered, then turned sepia. Not dim, not gone. A film filter. His walls lost their texture. His ceiling smoothed into painted sky. The floor, once wood, now clicked beneath his feet like a soundstage being prepped for a scene change. Even his heartbeat began to feel timed, syncopated, like part of a score he couldn't hear, but somehow obeyed. The mirror split entirely, and the marionette stepped through. Its tuxedo was dustless, its smile unchanged, but now it wore a director's headset around its neck. A clipboard in one hand, a piece of chalk in the other, with which it scratched the words, "Scene 2, Waking Life,"
into the air. The letters hung there, suspended midair, flickering like flicks of a reel. "You left before the credits," it said, tapping its clipboard. "That's bad form." Ezra turned and ran. Down the hallway, into his kitchen. Every window now showed the stop-motion town. Cars looping, milk vans passing the same corner over and over. One of the buildings, his apartment building, stood in the distance. He threw open the front door again. Instead of a hallway, a soundstage. Spotlights, mannequins holding boom mics. A set with the label, Ezra's apartment, interior, day. "No!" he screamed. "This isn't mine!" He turned, and there he was. Not the marionette, not the mannequin, but himself, Clay Ezra, the one from the throne room, his face painted with just enough humanity to feel wrong. He held a reel in his hand, Ezra's own memories. It spun slowly, dripping almond water onto the floor with each turn. "Lines, please," Clay Ezra said, holding up the script. "You're ad-libbing again. Stay in character." Ezra grabbed the nearest thing he could, a glass of water, and threw it. The glass stopped midair. Time froze. Even the drip from the ceiling paused. Then the marionette snapped a clapperboard. "Cut!" Everything rewound, fast, glass reforming, water unspilling. Ezra jolted as the world lurched backward, and then started again. He was back in his kitchen. But now, applause. A studio audience? He turned and saw an open wall. Beyond it, rows and rows of mannequin audience members, clapping and cheering. Laugh tracks layered in sloppy, overlapping loops. He screamed. The audience roared with laughter. He fell to his knees. They cheered. The marionette leaned in close, whispering beside him. "You thought you woke up." It tapped Ezra's chest. "But you never left." From above, the ceiling tore open, not plaster but film. It curled away like paper being burned, revealing once more the floating castle, hanging above everything, waiting, always watching. And from the castle's tallest tower, a projector clicked, and clicked, and clicked. And Ezra's voice echoed in the back of his mind. "I want to wake up now." And another voice, layered with his own. "You dreamt this." The castle opened above like a wound in the sky. Through the burning reel that had replaced Ezra's ceiling, strips of dream unraveled. They dangled down in coils, twisting across his living room, no, the set, with that same grainy texture, curling and uncurling like breathing celluloid snakes. The mannequins in the audience rose, their clapping growing mechanical, erratic. One collapsed mid-applause, splitting open, empty, just a hollow frame, a wire spine, and a single photo reel stuffed where a heart should have been. Ezra's face was on every frame. The marionette placed a hand on his shoulder. "You made such a lovely dream," it said, gently. "But it's time to film the ending. The real one." Ezra shook his head. "I destroyed it. I ended it. I played the final cut." "You did," it admitted, "and the dream ended. So we built you a new one." The marionette gestured outward toward the city beyond the mirror frame walls, where the stop-motion sun was rising again, resetting. The fountain began to bubble anew. The milk van restarted its loop. The sirens began their music, a slightly different tune this time. Cheerier. Ezra staggered backward. No, no more. He turned. Behind him, a staircase now spiraled up, carved not from stone or clay, but strips of his own life. Memories twisted into steps. The staircase shimmered with fading logic. At the top of the stairway, a projection screen. Endless. White. Ezra climbed. Each step struck a chord in some unseen orchestra. Music followed him, off-tune but rising. Behind him, the marionette climbed too. And the Clay Ezra followed, and behind them the audience of mannequins, rising like floodwater. Ezra reached the top. The screen towered before him, blank, empty, waiting. A voice whispered in his ear, "Project yourself." A console appeared, like the one in the throne room, but cracked, flickering. In its slot, a blank reel, no label. Ezra reached into his chest, without pain, without fear, and pulled. A shimmering strand of film uncoiled from beneath his ribs. His story. He fed it into the projector. It hissed, groaned, then play. The screen exploded with light, but there was no town, no milk vans, no clay, no castle. Just a bed, a room, a boy, sleeping. The screen zoomed closer. The boy twitched in bed, murmuring. The blanket shifted. Ezra recognized the face instantly. His own. But young, maybe 10. He watched the boy jolt awake, gasping. Saw him scribble in a notebook. On the page, the first image of a town square, a castle in the sky, a stick-figure version of a milkman, the first dream. Ezra stared, his breath catching. "I made it," he whispered. "I didn't find it. I made it." The marionette stepped beside him. "All creators get devoured by what they create, if they don't finish it." Ezra turned to face it. "Then let me finish it." He stepped to the edge of the platform, took one final look at the screen, still glowing with the sleeping boy, and jumped into it. There was no landing, only waking. Ezra sat bolt upright in bed, gasping, heart slamming. It was morning, real morning. No music, no fountain, no clay. He stood, trembling, and walked to the mirror. His reflection stared back. Normal. Alive. On the floor near his bed, his childhood sketchbook lay open. Drawings of castles, smiling milkmen, fountains, and monsters stared back at him. All done in pencil, all from another life. He picked it up, flipped to the last page. There, in his own handwriting, "You dreamt this, but it ends when you stop watching." The page was blank after that. Ezra closed the book, and finally the projector stopped.